I gotta say, it takes a decent amount to get me nervous, like following a group of other speakers, but you guys killed it. I'm a little competitive though. And I might be one of the biggest mama's boys in the room, I can tell you that. Really in thinking about today and talking with Mr. Joy about this event and the tradition here. Actually, one of my really close friends too, Alex Schaffner, he was a graduate from MBA, roommate for over a year, and we worked on a documentary together too. He became one of the youngest filmmakers to sell a film to ESPN. We did that. It was an MMA fight that I did in 2009, which is on Netflix, called The Fighting Chance, which is pretty cool that MBA grad did that. But really, with my story with my family, a lot of it really begins sort of the day that I was born. Preceding that, my mom and dad had been married a little over a year and a half. They were in their early 20s. I was the first of 4 kids, but they had no idea that I was going to be born with any type of disability. So it was 31 now, which is crazy because I'm kind of think of myself probably in the same maturity level as a lot of the middle schoolers sitting here. But the thing is that it was different about that though in that period of time. 31 years ago, the ultrasound technology was just a lot different. My best friend Joey, who's here, and my business partner, who's another mama's boy, Joey's wife is pregnant now too, and it's crazy because in 6 weeks into the pregnancy, you could go and see even some of the formation of the limbs. So really, I think about that day a decent amount, especially in sharing this story, but they had no idea that to be born with any type of disability or difference. It came as a big surprise. Initially, there was just a lot of confusion as to what went wrong, what might go wrong. Sort of shock. My grandparents on my mom's side jumped in the car and drove from Indiana to Washington, D.C., where I was born. And they got there, and my grandma was the one talking to my mom, and she shared with her sort of a piece of advice that I think helped my mom through. And she said, if you just look at his face and you see his smile, and everything will be okay. And I think that for my mom and my grandma, I know for a fact that they're 2 of the most mentally strong people that I've ever met anywhere. And I think it's because of the fact that they realize that there is, no matter how bad something seems, no matter how difficult something seems, there's always a choice to be able to go and look for what's right or what's good or what's true in something. And then that is within, the ability to go and do that is within every one of us. And it doesn't mean that it's easy to go and do that. It doesn't mean that we want to go and do that. It doesn't mean that it's going to go and come naturally to go and do that, but we have the capacity to go and do that. And really, around that time when it kind of reframed that for my mom and my dad, they began really just talking about what the future was going to go and look like. Sharing with other, just getting feedback from doctors, other medical professionals, and frankly, a lot of the doctors, they said, look, you're going to have to be prepared for the fact that Kyle's never going to have a normal life. You're going to have to take care of him forever. You're going to have to feed him, clothe him, dress him. And they just ask a simple question of why? Why can't he lead a normal life? And so consequently, it's easier said than done to live a quote unquote, normal life, but they had to watch me fail at stuff a lot, which for my mom was especially difficult because she wanted to go and jump in and go and do things for me. My dad was a little bit more hardcore, he actually said on TV that I was going to have to learn how to eat on my own or starve, which I hope he didn't mean literally, but the way I learned to go and eat was just picking up a spoon. I used to use a prosthetic spoon that would wrap around my arm, but we'd leave it at home, we'd forget it, go out to eat at a friend's house or restaurant. And, I would need, if I didn't have my special prosthetic spoon, I would need my mom or my grandma to feed me. My dad basically said, look, there's going to come a time where you're not gonna be here, or he's not gonna want you to be here, right? Like, he's gonna wanna go and do this on his own. Imagine like being on a senior prom date with like mom or grandma sitting behind me like, oh, here's a bike, Kyle. Like, oh, thanks, grandma. So, things absolutely could have turned out very differently if they'd bought into the suggestions that these, like the doctors and other professionals said, but the cool thing is that they didn't. And look, like, one of the things that's guided my life is this concept. I didn't come up with it. It was Alfred Korzybski, the father of general semantics. So I hope I don't see everybody's eyes glaze over when I say that. But like, it was 1931 he said this, but he said, the map is not the territory. Different than whatever the territory was, whatever reality was, whatever it could end up being. The thing is that we forget that we are like the mental cartographers. We are the ones that get to go and make up that map and decide, how we go and see things and what's going to go and unfold. Doesn't mean that it's going to go and turn out exactly the way we expect it, but we have, I think, a lot more within us than we even realize. And so now, fast forward to present day. I grew up most of my life in Atlanta, Georgia. I was a wrestler there and all that. Know those Simpsons really well, and know just the tradition to the school that most of my life is in Georgia. Present day, so 3 years ago, I moved to San Diego, California, to pursue fighing in the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu World Championships. Now, live on my own downtown in a studio apartment, move into the beach right now, and I'm moving in with a buddy, but effectively right now, I've got a studio apartment downtown that's really the only adaptation in the entire apartment is the silverware, which is totally normal silverware. I just put the silverware on the bottom shelf, which is incredibly confusing for my friends when they're looking for it for the first time. But things are pretty normal, right? So use a normal keyboard, type 50, 60 words a minute. Normal keyboard mostly just because learned how to type when I was in middle school because I wanted to play video games. Use a normal Xbox controller, use a normal pen, pencil to write with, use a normal toothbrush or razor blade to go and shave with, start experimenting with like a straight razor. My vehicle is fairly minimally adapted. You could go and hop in my vehicle and go and drive it. It's basically extended pedals. So there's a left brake that comes up that's extended and a right gas that's extended. I use the steering wheel to go and grab my arms. And this is a story debated not sharing, but don't do this. I've broken myself of this habit, but one of my friends said that one of the scariest moments of his life, who's been on the top of Mount Everest, said was when I was in the car and answered my iPhone while I was driving. So I've broken myself of that habit, promise, Bluetooth. So as I said, right, so things I know for a fact could have turned out a lot different. And one absolute sort of turning point moment was in bringing a flyer home from school. We had just moved from Indiana to Georgia, and the move was really tough. I was in 5th grade. Nobody likes to move. It was a challenging period, and especially too, I know, at home, my friends there looked at me as Kyle without the disability. When I moved, they looked at me in a totally different way. It was by far one of the hardest, if not the hardest year of my life. I was at a point where, it was like everything was cascading. He was even reading like Black Beauty, like this horse that doesn't have a home. It was so depressing. But it was, literally at a spot in 5th grade where I didn't have hope for what the rest of my life was going to look like. I was ready to give up on my life. And it's crazy to go and think about that now, but at the time it felt so real. It felt hopeless. It felt like there would never be that chance. And I remember every night I would beg and plead and pray that I could just go and wake up and have arms and legs. And if I had continued doing that, it would have been a very disappointing outcome. It's really the thing that kind of loosened the grip on that were sports. And I, now, for beyond the shadow of a doubt, I do believe that, that the things that we sometimes see as some of our biggest curses end up being some of the greatest gifts. But we can't always see it at the time. Sometimes we need those things to go and loosen the grip on whatever the fear and the doubt or hopelessness might have us like sort of entangled. And the thing for me was really that thing that loosened that grip was my first tackle in football. Leading up to this, I brought a flyer home from school, told my mom I wanted to go and play, convinced her to go and call the coach. She was a little bit more of like the pragmatic realist one in the family. My dad is more of the dreamer. And so my mom's trying to tell me, she's like, okay, you might be the water boy in the team, but there's going to be a place for you in the team. I'm thinking in my head, yeah, it's like, cool, Mom, just take me to the tryouts. I remember like, when he got to the tryouts and I, doing shuttle run stuff, like, bear crawl sprints, my shirt's like flying off over my head. I'm figuring like after that performance, they're definitely going to make me the quarterback on the team. So the first play though, they told me to go and line up as a nose guard, practice scrimmage. I have no idea what I'm doing. The center who's supposed to go and block me, he has no idea how to block me as my teammate then. So he basically just stood straight up. So I figured that was my chance, and I just dove under his legs and smashed my helmet in the quarterback's legs. So first play, got the sack. Came home that night. My dad was out of town on a business trip, so I called him up and I was like, you're not going to believe it. First play, he made the sack. Like, I'm done with youth football. I'm going straight to the NFL now. And it kind of was one of those things where in a way it was almost true. Like it was, the whole thing with the offensive defensive line is about like defensive line getting lower than your opponent, and nobody's going to get lower than me. So when the running back would come at me, I'd take my helmet and smash it into their shins as hard as I could. Kind of explain some of the brain injury stuff probably, but I remember like beyond the shadow of a doubt, like that moment too of being a part of the team, that first dose of like purpose and contribution, that first dose of camaraderie, and that just in the competition, it just changed me. Now, every one of us, I know for a fact, every one of you in here, this is a highly competitive environment, no matter whether it's a performing in arts, whether it's academically in sports, whatever it is. I know there's, even the pressures that are on you, can imagine in a lot of regards. But I would say too, to keep in mind just like the bigger picture of what you, like, I know like right now it's like laser focused on what you're doing here, but like what are those bigger areas of like purpose and contribution in your life? What are those like bigger dreams or aspirations or whatever that you have in the back of your head that you go and sometimes tell yourself that you're not good enough, you're not capable of it, no, it's crazy, it's whatever, it's a pipe dream. That is a lie. Like, what lies are we buying into about that? And sometimes, like, we've got to go and do stuff. Like, a big part of my life is just dealing with a massive amount of front-loaded failure. And by far, one of the greatest lessons I've ever learned is really learning anything is, like, inextricably linked to failure. But it's not even like big failures. It's a lot of times just like the learning pain failures. And even big failures now, like if you go and fail a test or you go and mess up at a game or performance or something like that, it might feel like the going thing, but in the grand scheme of things, it's like they're relatively little failures. And I could give you 1,000 different examples of what that would go and look like, but it was everything from wrestling. Lost the first 35 matches I ever competed in. Weightlifting, could only lift like 2.5 pounds on each arm when I first started. Even something like the spoon, and picking up the spoon and swinging it around to go and scoop up the food. Putting on a sock, something like this. Took 30 minutes to go and put the sock on for the first time. And I remember doing it and just drenched with sweat. I had found a paper clip that I could reshape in my mouth to go and form like a fishing hook and go and pull it on. My parents encouraged me to go and do most things on my own. There were some things that my mom would just go and help me with because she didn't want me to go and focus on the disability, and just was easier. But it came time, I was 15 years old, wanted to go to a movie with my best friend Joey, and he was gonna come by and pick me up. Him and his mom, he'd just gotten his learner's permit, so I'm thinking like there's no way I'm gonna have my best friend and his mom show up, and I'm basically like half naked and struggling here. Like I've got to go and find a way to get this thing on. So went and reshaped the paperclip, stuck it in there, and for 30 minutes battled with this stupid sock, pouring sweat all over this thing to go and get this thing on. But now, for like reference sakes, when you go and put a sock on, it doesn't, don't use a paperclip anymore, and doesn't take a whole lot longer than it takes, anybody else to go and put on a sock. But unless there's that moment in time where we cross the threshold and we go and say, like, no matter what it is, no matter what I have to go and subject myself to, that I'm going to go and deal with the failure, I'm going to go and deal with the uncomfort, I'm going to go and deal with the fear, and just figure it out until I'm proficient enough to get to the other side, then we won't do it, whether it's a little thing or a bigger thing. And it always, works out and changes if we stick it out, I believe, long enough. And some things, I don't want to go and get across the message too that we should never give up on something. No, there's a bunch of things that you should give up on immediately. I hate it when I hear that, never give up. No, definitely give up on some things. If you're in a job that you can't stand, give up on that job, or relationship that's still terrible, it's get out, no, give up on the relationship. But the bigger stuff that I'm talking about though too, it's the things that you really truly want, whatever your life ends up being about. Another aspect of this too is I love the spirit of the message that anything is possible, but I don't believe it. It's not. Anything is possible, cool, go bench press 10,000 pounds and let me know how it works out. I love the spirit of that. But really, I think a better way to go and put it is to go and say, I'm going to know my limits today, but never stop trying to break them. To have a realistic, honest assessment with ourselves of where we are and our limitations today in this moment in time, to go and look at ourselves and tell the truth to ourselves, and that is the extent to which we can be free. It's for every one of us in here in this room, for myself, for moms, for sons, for faculty, there's at least one or two gigantic excuses that we could go and give up. And what would happen inside of this community if every single one of us were to go and take on just one or two of those things? What would be possible? Where would our lives be a year from today if that were the case? Told you with the wrestling, and it started out 0-35, hated it. Mom and dad would drag me out to these tournaments. Basically, my dad had been a wrestler. If you were to ask him honestly if he thought that I would have ever won a match, he would have told you no. My coach too, he was an amazing coach, Coach Ramos, who'd go and tuck his arms into his sleeves to go and wrestle from my perspective. I know the Simpsons know Coach Ramos well. It's, Coach Ramos too didn't think that it was ever going to be possible for me to go and win a match. I would sit in the bleachers, these bleachers, and I would go and hear other kids, other people go and say, a guy without arms and legs could never win a match in wrestling. Because he can't reach out and grab them, doesn't have arms long enough, doesn't have leverage, all of that stuff. And the thing was, I believed it. And I made that true. And I lost. So it's 35 times in a row. Hated it. Lost every match in 6th grade. Did not want to come out and do it again. My dad basically tricks me into coming out in my 7th grade year. And the rule was, it was a trap because my parents had said, if you signed up for a sport in the season, then you had to go through the whole season. You couldn't quit halfway through. So I knew if I signed up that year, I was going to have to go through a whole other season. But my dad said, look, I want to tell you something I never told you. I lost every single match my first year in wrestling too. And he said, it's not uncommon where people just lose every match their first year in wrestling. But everybody who signs up their second year will go and win a match because you're going to find some kid who it's their first year, so you'll beat them. So I signed up, and incidentally too, I was interviewing my dad's dad, my grandpa, for my book many years later, and recounting this story to him and telling him, what was it like for my dad when he was losing all those matches? Did he want to go and quit? Did he want to give up too? And I found out that whole story that I've literally based my entire life off was a complete lie. But it ended up, power of suggestion, confirmation bias, looking for things that we believe to be true is everywhere, and we can go and use it for us or against us. Like that is like the power of belief, is that if we believe something to be true, we're gonna go and scan for all the things that are gonna go and confirm or deny that reality. And for me, I found like the first kid that I beat, it was like, I heard that he was a first year wrestler, it was like, boom, that's my kid. Like I'd won before I ever stepped out there. I'm like, this kid doesn't even know what he's doing in the warm up. He's kind of scrawny, like shake hands, he's got a weak handshake. Like went after him, like breath blew the whistle, took him down, went and grabbed people. It was like kind of with my arm and chest and like barrel rolling. And took him down, I landed on top. I'm like, I'm more shocked than this kid is. My dad saw his loss, told me to let him up. I was like, all right, cool, let him up. Do it again. Did the same thing, took him down, let him up, just chased him around, grabbed his arm, flipped him, took him down, let him up, took him down, let him up. Figured this is working, I'm just gonna keep doing it. Took him down, let him up. He stopped the match, went and beat this kid in a mercy roll. Had never won a match before, tech fall. So ended up wrestling varsity for one of the top teams in the Southeast, and qualified for the senior nationals, beat the state champion from Alabama, the state champion from Louisiana, went to double overtime with the state champion from Tennessee. Ended up placing top 12 in the nation in my weight class. Had, with the weightlifting, went from the 5 to 10 pounds I started, ended up, progressing at that, kind of learned to use my body in different ways. Ended up doing chains strapped around my arms. I had smaller chains, broke those, got bigger chains. Ended up doing a modified bench press, did 420 pounds. Reason why, even thinking about that though, and what the difference was and what I saw my capacities or capabilities of as an 11-year-old, there's no way I ever could have dreamed a scenario. The truth is, none of us, myself included, know what we are capable of, what's inside of us. But I believe there's something greater inside of our hearts and our minds than we know. And that, frankly, it's a relatively black or white thing that I think that we're either gonna leave this planet better than we found it or not. And to me, there's nothing wrong with success as long as we have that mindset too, to be able to go and give back to people that didn't have the same fortune that we had. Just by virtue of the fact, regardless of what your economic background is in your home, it doesn't matter at all. What matters to me is the fact that you're here, the mentors that you've had, the friends that you made, the relationships you've had, the potential that exists for you is enormous, but it comes too with the responsibility to go and, I think, leave the world better than you found it, to do something with your life, to be of service something, not just to go and do things for yourself, but to be able to go and have some kind of greater cause. Because it's in those moments where that deeper why, I think, will go in service. And I've talked about this, find your why, and one of the things that blew me away one time was my mom, I remember she heard me talk about this in a speech of find your why. She said I felt bad because my why was just to be a mom. No, that could be the greatest why. To be a mom, to be a dad, to be a grandpa, grandma, to be a brother, a sister, a friend. But it's the why too is not even something you can go and put into words, and there's 1,000 of them going on at any given moment. But I think truly only a handful that actually really matter. The thing is sometimes we get it confused and we end up pursuing the wrong ones for the wrong reasons because it's somebody else's vision for our life. It's somebody else wants. Or it's because we don't think that we truly are deserving of the deeper ones there, that we're capable of it. If you look at me and say oh, he's a speaker, he can go and impact people, but I can't, that's a lie. But to go and close with this too, you guys heard me in the video, when I'm hiking, climbing, that was kind of the recent thing. Definitely had the adventure ADD thing going on. And, and also too, there's other chapters, started a gym 8 years ago, CrossFit gym, which has been amazing. Getting to work with people in there, but effectively, on a climb, it was a big dream to it was just a huge dream to want to go and get in the mountains because that was one of the few places that still felt inaccessible. I couldn't take my wheelchair up to the top of one of these things. And I remember a moment when I told my friend I wanted to go and do Kilimanjaro. I'd just done Stone Mountain in Atlanta. They climbed 900-foot Stone Mountain, tore all the skin off of the ends of my arms, and used leather welding sleeves to try to protect my arms. Got to the top though, and I was like, whoa, this is beautiful. Thing was, I'd been to the top before. I'd been to the top maybe like a dozen times on the tram. It was just totally different being under my own steam and getting to go and see it and being with my buddies. And told my friend that night we wanted to go and do Kilimanjaro, and she said, you're freaking crazy. How are you gonna go and do this? Tore all the skin off your arms doing Stone Mountain, now you wanna go and do Kilimanjaro. I said, I don't know, but we'll go and figure it out. And that's kind of always how it is like not knowing. I think not knowing is actually, to me, a lot more exciting, embracing not knowing than even knowing sometimes, going into the unknown. Figuring out, feeling it out, like what's gonna go and happen, how we're gonna go and do this. So we trialed a bunch of different gear options, finally came up with, we're wrapping bath towels and oven mitts and pot holders and duct tape and mountain bike tires. Finally got like a working prototype. I've got some amazing friends I'm fortunate to have to go and spend hours ripping apart this duct tape. We turned it into a carbon fiber system connected to a climbing harness, and then got the final gear system about 2 weeks before we found ourselves at the base of Kilimanjaro. And then now looking at this thing and seeing whoa, maybe this is a really bad idea. And truthfully too, it was amazing. I was laughing and joking with some of our friends. We had a bigger mission behind it. We wanted to go and make an impact on veterans. Thank your brother for me for serving. I wanted to go and serve in the military my whole life. I even took the test to try to go and get in, and they told me I could be a chaplain. I was like, that's cool. Does he get a gun? And found out that he didn't. I was like, okay, I'm gonna do something else. But I just have always had a lot of respect for military members. One of my best friends is a Navy SEAL. That's actually cool. I haven't announced this even publicly, but leaving to go march actually in less than 2 weeks to go in Greece. We're doing a 240-mile trek from Sparta to Thermopylae. Got invited to go with about 15 SEALs. So good thing the speech was beforehand, because I don't know if I'll live through this trip, but be posting some stuff too on social media and all that, in addition to the jazz band. Anyway, on day 4, both climbs, Mount Aconcagua that we did this last year is the high peak in South America that you saw in the video. It's nearly 23,000 feet. It's about 3,500 feet higher than Kilimanjaro. Nobody's ever heard of Aconcagua, but it actually took us a week longer to do. We're on Aconcagua for 17 days, Kilimanjaro for 10 to reach the summit. And both were about 2.5 back down. But by day 4, I remember on both trips, I'm thinking why am I here? I was in my tent, I'm hearing my friends laughing and joking. Outside, I'm thinking it's not fair. They're having fun, I'm in here struggling, this sucks. And on Aconcagua, I'm thinking you idiot, why did you go back? It was broken, and the thing was too, is that on both climbs, it ended up being the last, that day 4 was the last day that I could have paid to go and have a helicopter evac. And I realized very quickly that I had this mentality of 1 foot in, 1 foot out. And wanting to go and make an impact on veterans in doing these climbs, especially with Kilimanjaro. We came across the mother of a soldier named Corey Johnson, who had 3 little girls and dreams to travel the world and climb mountains with his daughters. And he was not as fortunate as your brother, and he did not get to come home. I met his mom about 5 months after she had lost her son. and still grieving, like you never get over a loss like that. And she said, if he were here today, he would want to go and help you with this mission to make an impact on the troops. Go and show them, look, I think being born the way that I was too is 1,000 times easier than dealing with a loss later on, but I wanted to go and show the guys you can still create the life that you want. And his mom asked me, she said, we've been having a hard time deciding what to do with Corey's remains. And she said, would you promise to bring Corey's ashes to the summit in Kilimanjaro? And I looked her in the eye and promised her that I would. And Mount Aconcagua, that fourth day, was going through my head, was a little bit different. And right over top of my heart was carrying pictures of my grandma. And just lost her we had just lost her a few months prior to a grade 4 brain tumor. And, that by far was the closest I've ever been to someone who lost. My grandma was everything to me. Taught me by far the most powerful lesson that I've ever learned of just reaching out and shaking somebody's hand. For the students I've ever gotten to meet already, you guys know my instinct is just to go and reach out and shake your hand. She said when people hear your voice and they see your face and they shake your hand, they'll forget about the disability. In addition to 1,000 other lessons that she taught me. But I knew that by being there, we would be able to have the opportunity to go and share Grandma Betty's spirit and story with even more people. And Corey and her, even after they'd passed, it had that profound impact on me. It was only when I was in that moment of being most broken that I was able to find out why I was there. And the last salient lesson I'll leave you with is I remember the very, very clear moment of the summit on Aconcagua at 22,000, roughly 22,300 feet with only 500 feet left to go. My body was in full shutdown mode. Had only had a protein shake to eat that day and half a Cliff Bar and didn't even have the energy to hold it, dropped it in the dirt. And my guides were saying that I wasn't moving fast enough. They had concerns I was going to not make it to the summit, so we had a 4 p.m. turnaround time. And which is the dangerous part with the mountains, as I'm sure many of you probably known from watching the movies and stuff or being on a mountain, but the turnaround time is a critical element because weather can go and come in, bad things can go and happen if you don't respect that line. So my friends were told, Joey and Kevin, David, my friends I was with, were told to go ahead and reach the summit. They were moving faster than I was at that point. Didn't know what was going to go and happen. I had this moment of massive frustration and it's sort of feeling that sense of anger of I've been here for 17 days now and my friends are going to go and reach the summit. I'm only a couple hundred feet away, that same thing, coming up, it's just not fair. And my guide behind me is yelling at me, encouraging me, up, Kyle, up, keep climbing. And I'm thinking okay, I get the encouragement. He's been doing it all day. I wanted to turn around and stab my ice spike in his shoe. And then I used this moment of surrender though. It was you know what? It really doesn't matter. Frankly, they're on the summit, but any thought about being on the summit is a wasted thought. Doesn't matter. It's not going to get me there any closer. Any thought about, even about how far we've come to this point doesn't really matter. And literally the realization was really the main thing that matters is the only thing that I have to really deal with right now is whatever I can see with my ski goggles. The view's not the most glamorous in the world. I'm staring at the dirt, staring at the ice. I'm this is my view. And all of a sudden it was I've got these 2 or 3 feet to deal with. And then it was all of a sudden, it was boom, there's another 2 or 3 feet to deal with, and another 2 or 3 feet. Do those 2 or 3 feet, another 2 or 3 feet would go and come into view. Put my head down, went to work probably for over an hour and 15 straight, just playing that mental game, and all of a sudden my guy told me to stop and look up, and it was just 15 minutes away from the summit. I know for a fact there are people in this room that are capable of changing and impacting the world. But you've got to sometimes, whatever it is, you've got to get out of your own way, whatever it is to keep you from believing that and making that a reality. Know your limits today. Not know them tomorrow. Rediscover them. And the day after that, don't know them, rediscover them again. Never, ever stop trying to rediscover them. Never stop trying to break them. And find your why. Why are you here on this planet? Your why, your truth. Realize after